Repeat is brought to you by Plex Live TV and DVR. Cut the cord, keep your cash. Now watch and record your favorite free HD TV digital broadcast channels, including local news and sports. Then view on any device, anywhere in the world. Visit www.plex.tv to learn more. In 1977, Universal Television acquired the rights to the Marvel Comics library, including Captain America, The Human Torch, and The Incredible Hulk. Studio head Frank Price contacted Kenneth Johnson, fresh off the run of two interconnected sci-fi hits, The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman. Price asked which superhero show he wanted to produce. Johnson replied, quote, "Gee, none of them, Frank," unquote. I'm Shane R. Monroe. This is Repeat. The late 70s were no stranger to comic book superhero television shows. Big names included Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, DC's Shazam featuring Captain Marvel, Nicholas Hammond's The Amazing Spider-Man, and The Secrets of Isis. Many extraordinary protagonists were pulled from comic books. They were alive and well in such animated titles such as The Super Friends featuring Superman, Batman and Robin, and many others. Clever listeners might realize that a lot of the aforementioned shows are DC Universe-centric, with the exception of Peter Parker's radioactive spider alter ego. The 1977 Marvel deal opened up the door for more Marvel characters, including Daredevil and Thor, and of course the Incredible Hulk. Despite Kenneth Johnson's outright negative response to helming a show in the Marvel Universe and negativity regarding comic books in general, he was noted as saying, quote, "I don't get along well with primary colors and spandex." He gave the project further consideration. His wife had recently given him a copy of Victor Hugo's novel Les Miserables, the story of a young man who is trying to live a normal life after spending time in prison for stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister's children. This fugitive story, paired with a little Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, led Johnson to believe he could possibly take the ludicrous thing called The Incredible Hulk and turn it into an adult drama suitable for television. Johnson returned to Frank Price and said, quote, "Okay, look, I'll do the Hulk if it's my casting," unquote. The producer also requested a deal to do Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe in exchange for running the gamma-fueled drama. Price agreed. Johnson would spend the next 7 days writing the pilot episode of The Incredible Hulk. His disdain for the Incredible Hulk comics would be echoed effectively in this statement, quote, "There was not much from the comics that I could take. It was just sort of a secondary title amongst the Marvel Universe at that time. Basically, I read one and said, okay, there's nothing here I can use, except that when he gets angry, he metamorphoses," unquote. Kenneth Johnson continued his efforts to change the graphic novels into something he felt was more real. He placed a call to comic creator Stan Lee, asking him why Banner's alter ego was green instead of red. Red, Johnson said, is a human color, the color of rage. Stan told him that the first edition of the Hulk had the monster in gray, and the printer said they could do a consistent green coloring. Johnson maintains to this day that the Incredible Hulk would have worked red or green, but the studio refused to let him change the color away from Marvel's original. Johnson didn't like the naming of comic book characters having the same first letter in both their first and last names: Bruce Banner, Peter Parker, Lois Lane. One of Johnson's changes, that of the name of the protagonist to be changed from Bruce Banner, his name in the comics, to David Banner, was once assumed to be purely another means to stray from the comic books, but it came to light that there was another reason the name was changed. Stan Lee and the Hulk himself, Lou Ferrigno, have both been on record as saying that CBS wanted it changed because the name Bruce sounded, quote, "too gayish," unquote. Johnson also went on record as saying he chose the name David for Banner's first name because it was a way to honor his son of the same name. Die-hard fans of the show will be quick to point out that Bruce does appear in the introduction credits to the show on David Bruce Banner's tombstone. Much of the rest of the canon of the comics were ignored as well, purposefully leaving out arch-villains, instead making Banner's enemies common, troubled people. While it would be easy to think that Stan Lee, the creator of the character, would be upset, if not insulted, by all the changes Johnson made or wanted to make in his property, the opposite appears to be true. Lee said in a 2000 interview, quote, "The Hulk was done intelligently. It was done by Ken Johnson, who's a brilliant writer, producer, director, and he made it an intelligent adult show that kids could enjoy. He took a comic book character and made him somewhat plausible. Women liked it, and men liked it, and teenagers liked it. It was beautifully done. He changed it quite a bit from the comic book, but every change he made sense," unquote. The cast of the show primarily consisted of 3 characters: David Banner, the Hulk, and Jack McGee, an investigative reporter. It's worth noting that many shows of the era followed a similar mold. Wonder Woman had herself, Diana Prince, and Steve Trevor. The Bionic shows had the star Oscar Goldman and Dr. Rudy Wells. Support cast were often contract players pulled from the Universal stock that had agreed to appear on whatever show they were needed for. There was no other choice for David Banner than the incredible Bill Bixby, who initially turned down the role due to its comic book origins. Bixby was enjoying a very busy career as an actor, having been part of several popular television shows such as My Favorite Martian and The Courtship of Eddie's Father. The dark-haired, good-looking thespian had also done his tour of duty as guest stars in other fan faves such as The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. After reading Johnson's more down-to-earth script, Bixby agreed to shoot the pilot. Ferrigno was not the first choice to play the raging green, muscle-bound monster. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the initial choosing to play the Hulk, but during auditions it was deemed he simply wasn't tall enough against Bill Bixby's 5'9" size, and Johnson elected to go with the James Bond villain Jaws, also known as Richard Kiel, who stood a massive 7'2" tall. During the shooting of the pilot, it was determined, by Johnson's son no less, that Kiel's muscle mass simply wasn't enough to represent the green-skinned Goliath, and he was replaced by the Schwarzenegger-recommended Lou Ferrigno, a bodybuilder that competed with Arnold on the iron-pumping circuit. Johnson also noted in a DVD commentary that Kiel may have been too tall opposite Bixby, and the producer was intent on keeping the show grounded more in reality. Ferrigno was several inches taller than Arnold at about 6'5", and his physique was perfect for the role. Jack McGee, the show's lead antagonist, was portrayed by Jack Colvin, a Universal contract player who'd done quite a bit of television prior to Hulk. Younger listeners might remember him as the psychiatrist from the killer doll-led vehicle Child's Play. McGee was an original character created by Johnson and did not appear in the comic books. Fashioned after Jalbert's relentless law enforcement officer in Les Miserables, McGee is the only consistent villain in the television series. Of the role's offer, Colvin said, quote, "When they told me the title, I laughed. But then they gave me 2 scripts to read, and I knew the series would go," unquote. As with many television shows, the series started as a 2-hour movie simply known as The Incredible Hulk. The movie was split up for syndication. The first show retained the namesake. The second show was retitled A Death in the Family. Like Glenn A. Larson's Battlestar Galactica, the Incredible Hulk pilot movie actually had a theatrical release in some countries in Europe, where it became the top-grossing movie for 2 months solid. The plot of the film begins with David Banner's nightmare of the death of his wife, Laura. In the dream, the picturesque life of David and Laura ends in a tragic car accident, with Banner trying to pull the rolled-over vehicle off the ground to get his wife out of the car. David awakens as he realizes he has failed and his wife is killed in the accident. We fast forward to a research facility where Banner and his co-scientist, Dr. Elena Marks, are studying people who have exhibited superhuman strength in the time of desperation, trauma, and hopelessness. Banner's anger at his inability to save his wife while so many others manage to save loved ones in even more dire circumstances starts to intrude on his work, becoming an obsession. McGee shows up at the facility begging Banner for an interview about his work. Banner shines him on proper, but McGee tells him that he just doesn't give up that easy. In a breakthrough, Banner and his partner discover all their special subjects have something abnormal in their DNA, but David finds the same abnormality in his own life's building blocks. What could be the difference? A fluke discussion with a coworker leads Banner to examine the gamma activity during each superhuman act of his test subjects. Each and every event, there were spikes in gamma activity, possibly from solar flares. Positive he is right, he races to the lab to expose himself to gamma radiation, a dose of 300,000 units. He straps himself in and is irradiated, not realizing that the piece of tape where the 300,000 marker should be was actually 2 million units. Banner seems unaffected. He tests his strength only to find out that nothing appears to be different. Upset at his apparent failure, he races home in the rain, pondering the puzzle. An untimely flat tire sends Banner out into the rain to replace the wheel. He's increasingly agitated by the rain as he changes the tire. One of the lug nuts breaks loose and he scrapes his hand on the pavement. The gamma radiation in his body is triggered, and David Banner begins the epic metamorphoses that would become the crux of the show. The Hulk takes over, bending the tire iron like it is clay. He beats the living crap out of the car and sends it rolling down the hill, shrieking with rage and fury. His anger satiated, the Hulk walks away in the rain. In the morning, Hulk tries to save a young girl that falls into a lake, but his intentions were misconstrued, and the girl's father shoots Hulk with a rifle. Hulk destroys his weapon and their camp, but leaves the father and daughter safe. As Hulk comes down from his gamma high, he is restored to Banner, his clothes considerably worse for wear. Banner realizes what has happened, and he seeks out his fellow researcher and scientist, Dr. Elena Marks. He tells her what he has done, and he remembers some of the incident. They discover his gunshot wound has already started healing rapidly. As the pair begins to research his anomaly, Jack McGee, the investigative reporter that spoke with Banner earlier, shows up at Dr. Marks' house, trying to get that interview David denied him. She also refuses. They continue their research with Banner sequestered into a highly secure lab, trying to recreate the metamorphosis. They manage to create the lightning, the rain, and the darkness, but nothing happens. Defeated, they cancel the experiment and lay down for some rest, David still in the secure lab. This is where we start to realize these two have real feelings for each other. Banner sleeps. Suddenly his alpha waves go off the charts and he's back in the car with his wife. The tire blows, they roll over, and Banner is again thrown from the vehicle while his wife is trapped. He tries to lift the car, but he can't. His eyes pop open from sleep and he transforms into the Hulk. The monster wreaks havoc on the secure lab as Dr. Marks frantically transcribes what she's seeing. The Hulk pounds through 10-inch thick walls and 6-inch glass and escapes the secure lab. Marks calms the Hulk down and he regresses back to Banner. McGee smells a story. Having found the Hulk footprint at the lake and knowing what he does about the work Banner and Marks are doing, he begins to harass and pursue the pair of scientists, even breaking into the secure lab, finding evidence of the Hulk. McGee is caught hiding in a closet, and Banner gets to utter the famous line, "Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." The lab explodes while Banner and McGee are outside. McGee is dumped over some chemicals that caused a huge chemical chain reaction with Dr. Marks inside. McGee is knocked unconscious, leaving Banner to try to save her. The Hulk once again appears and carries her to safety, but it's too late. In a touching moment, as Marks dies and the Hulk looks at her, Marks confesses her love to David. Hulk screams and cries out, then walks away. Dr. Marks is laid to rest next to an empty coffin marked with David Bruce Banner's headstone. Presumed dead, Banner must now go on the run, hoping the Hulk will never come through again, knowing Mr. McGee will always be lurking in the wings, hoping to catch and exploit the Green Goliath. The series would find Banner, always under an assumed B-lettered last name, in new jobs, towns, and situations. When the Hulk inevitably came out, Banner would have to pack his knapsack and head to the next town, continuing to search for a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him. The Incredible Hulk's final episode aired in May of 1982 and was named A Minor Problem. It was the 7th episode of the shortened 5th season. New World Television obtained the rights and brought the team back together for 3 made-for-television movies. In 1988, The Incredible Hulk Returns aired, with the trifecta in place, Bixby, Ferrigno, and Colvin. It has been 2 years since the Hulk has surfaced. Banner has created a device called the Gamma Transponder, which will rid him of gamma radiation. In this episode, Banner's associate Don Blake finds a mystic hammer that allows him to summon Thor, an ancient Viking warrior played by Eric Kramer. Veteran director Nicholas Correa directs, with Bixby assisting, however, he remained uncredited. The trial of the Incredible Hulk followed in 1989, bringing to life another superhero from the Marvel Universe in the form of Daredevil. In this movie, Banner is on a subway when two men attack a woman. Banner tries to help and is beaten. Hulking out, he saves the woman, but when he awakens, he is arrested as her attacker. Attorney Matt Murdock, played by Rex Smith, offers to help free of charge in exchange for assistance with indicting Wilson Fisk, a powerful local criminal. The finale movie in 1990 wraps up the television series. Titled The Death of the Incredible Hulk, we see the final attempt of David Banner to rid himself of his anger-induced green menace, which results in the title-given death of Banner and the creature. As with so many television shows featured on repeat, the production of the series is nearly as fascinating as the show itself. The green skin bore by our hulking star was provided by two different types of makeup. For most shots, a thicker, almost clay-like texture was used, which Ferrigno would later say masked some of his muscular definition. For water shots, they used a grease-type makeup that would really show off his physique. Because of the makeup and the 3-hour application process, Ferrigno said he could not sweat or do much physical activity while shooting, which was year-round back then, so no matter what time they got done shooting, he would go to the gym, even if it was 2 a.m. in the morning. Lou often sat in a refrigerated trailer to avoid sweating off his makeup. Ferrigno proudly did almost all of his own stunts, with the exception of jumping from high places. In a recollection of working with stuntmen, Lou tells a story about having to throw one of them into a lake from a 12-foot scaffolding onto an airbag for the particular shot. Ferrigno tells the stuntman that the bag is too close, that he can throw him much further. The stuntman shot a retort about knowing that bodybuilders aren't as strong as they look, and told Lou to throw him. The green-painted actor tossed the stunt double at full strength, as was called for by the director, 15 feet past the bag onto the cement. The stuntman refused to work with Ferrigno again after that. In addition to the makeup, Ferrigno was required to wear special hard contact lenses, which had to be removed every 15 minutes due to irritation of the actor. Bill Bixby also used these lenses during his metamorphoses. Little-known fact is that Ferrigno, while usually barefoot while in Hulk's character, often wore a green pair of slippers, and this actually snuck into an episode where Hulk is running through Times Square, New York. During an interview, Ferrigno joked, quote, "Even the mighty Hulk wouldn't run barefoot through Times Square," unquote. He also had to wear a wig made of yak hair. The snarls and growls of the Hulk weren't voiced by Ferrigno, but by Ted Cassidy, known from his role as Lurch from the television hit The Addams Family. Cassidy also voiced over the intro, commonly inaccurately given to Ferrigno. Ted died after the second season, and the role of Hulk's voice was taken over by character actor Charles Napier, known by many as Murdoch, the general that sent John Rambo on his fateful mission in Rambo First Blood Part 2. While becoming a popular series, the early days of the show were often the target of ridicule by press and audience alike. Despite his hesitancy initially, Bixby got behind the project 100% and defended it publicly. Bixby said during an interview, quote, "We're approaching this very seriously. I knew when I looked at that title it would be misleading, but it's a quality show. I feel if people would watch one episode, it would take away any doubts. Anyone who knows my work, I ask them to trust me in this venture. I really believe in it," unquote. The Incredible Hulk was also inspiring and took on real issues that people could relate to. A response in the New York Daily News in 1979, Bill said, quote, "I wish that people who dismiss us with a wave of a hand would read the mail we get from parents. We're frequently dealing with responsible themes such as child abuse and retarded children," unquote. Possibly as famous as the Mean Green Giant is the theme song that has withstood the test of time. The haunting piano melody has appeared frequently as a beloved piece of pop culture. I personally found the animated show Family Guy's use of the song as one of the best. Show patriarch Peter Griffin discovers he is a piano virtuoso when he's drunk. The baby Stewie delights in his father's newfound talent and asks Peter to, quote, "Play that sad walking away song from The Incredible Hulk," unquote. As Peter plays it, Stewie walks backwards with his thumb up and his backpack on, shouting, look at me, look at me. Banner would be seen at the end of each episode behind the closing credits, thumbing for a ride to his next destination. The song actually has a name, The Lonely Man, composed by Joe Harnell, who also composed for The Bionic Woman, Alien Nation, and V. If you really want to see just how much this theme means to the world, hop over to YouTube and type in The Lonely Man song and be amazed. The show was, at the time, one of the most expensive series being done. As with other superhero shows of the time, The Incredible Hulk had 2 Hulk-outs each episode. During the 3rd year of the series, the studio asked the showrunners to cut down to a single instance of the Hulk-out per episode. Nicholas Correa, supervising producer, screenwriter, and sometimes director of the series, along with Johnson himself, told the studio no, and were promptly fired. Correa muses, quote, "The state of affairs only lasted about 48 hours, and everybody was brought back to normal by our star, Bill Bixby, making it clear he needed our services to carry on," unquote. Johnson commented on the event as well, saying, quote, "Peter Thompson took over the production department and called me one day and said, 'Kenny, you got to take $100,000 out of every episode. That's the rule.' I said it can't be done, and he suspended me, and he went to the whole staff and managed to suspend everybody. All of a sudden, there's no more staff. This lasted for 24 hours, and everything went back to normal, except Peter Thompson was thrown out of his job about a month later," unquote. Other stories from the set included the need to signal Ferrigno at the start and end of every scene due to the fact his hearing aids were not of the best quality. Somebody would lay down on the ground beneath the camera line and tap Lou on the leg to start. A second code was used to stop Lou from wrecking the set. Later, Ferrigno got better hearing devices and was able to perform without the physical cues. In the chase to keep the Incredible Hulk fresh, they brought on producer Jeff Freilich in the 3rd season. Freilich had an interesting storyline that never quite made it to the air. Banner would be a logger in Oregon working near a river. He starts hulking out over silly things like bee stings and stubbing his toe. Banner's terrified and confused at this new change. We discover later on in the story arc that a B-29 loaded with a nuclear device had crash-landed into the lake, and the extra radiation was accelerating the Hulk-outs. This would have given Banner something new to test, hypothesize, and pursue, giving him a kind of new quest. Freilich said he fought with people on the show over his closeness with the lead actors, and he left, going down the street to work with Glenn A. Larson, working on Galactica 1980. While Richard Kiel inevitably lost the role of the Incredible Hulk, his portrayal of the not-so-jolly Green Giant is still captured on celluloid. One very short top-down view of Kiel as the Hulk appears near a tree after the giant saves a girl from drowning in the lake. This can be seen at timestamp 38 minutes 35 seconds into the pilot episode available on DVD. Kiel didn't mind losing the role. The hard contact lenses used in Hulk's eyes caused the actor great pain, and he found the green makeup very difficult to remove. Kiel died in 2014 at the age of 74. Jack McGee's portrayal by Jack Colvin was often touted as being one of the more underappreciated parts of the show. Times reviewer Kevin Thomas commended the actor for doing, quote, "more with this character than it probably deserves," unquote. Colvin was also very comfortable on the stage and returned to it frequently between television gigs. Colvin died in 2005 at the age of 71. Bill Bixby was no stranger to suffering either. He bore a son with his first wife, Brenda Bennett, in 1974. In 1981, the boy died suddenly of a rare throat infection. Their marriage would not survive their child's death. Bixby and Bennett divorced shortly thereafter. Within the year, Bixby's ex-wife committed suicide. He remarried in 1989 to Laura Michaels, oddly the same first name as his dead on-screen wife, and they were married a year later. Tragedy would strike again as Bill was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 1991. He underwent treatment, but his marriage failed again, resulting in divorce the same year. Bixby would marry again to Judith Kleiben in 1993. A little over a month later, Bixby collapsed on the set of the show Blossom. Bixby wouldn't last the year. He went public with his illness and revealed his condition on popular talk shows. Complications from prostate cancer took Bixby's life on November 21st, 1993. Ferrigno, the third element of the Hulk trifecta, is alive and well. Now 66 years old, Lou Ferrigno is still working in television, doing live-action work as well as animated show voiceover work. Our younger audience may know him as Billy from Adventure Time. Lou continues his work as the CGI Hulk as the uncredited voiceover for the Avengers films. Of the endearing appeal of his on-screen persona, Ferrigno noted, quote, "He's green, so every nationality embraces the Hulk. He's angry, and everybody can relate to that and wish they could throw a car around sometimes," unquote. The Incredible Hulk would live on in several more films. However, the green rage-filled monster would only appear as computer-generated imagery, never again as a muscular human bodybuilder. The 2003 film, simply titled Hulk, starred Eric Bana and was not received well overall, likely due to the return to more comic book form, alienating the original fans of the television series looking to continue the original feel. It could also be that CGI simply didn't offer a realistic Hulk experience, often compared to looking like, quote, Shrek, unquote, despite being Industrial Light and Magic's most ambitious and complex CGI character to date. In 2008, a new film titled The Incredible Hulk was released starring Edward Norton. Geared to pleasing all Hulk audiences, from comic book to TV show, and even a little from Ang Lee's previous effort, this rendition seemed to resonate a little better with everyone, featuring a 6.7 score out of 10 on Internet Movie Database, whereas the Ang Lee rendition rated 5.7. Metacritic scores also agree with the spread. Currently, the Hulk is traveling cinemas via the Avengers route in all his CGI glory. 3 films in the can, with more on the way. The comic book fans prefer their CGI Hulk, speaking and doing over-the-top Hulk stuff. But for many of us, Bixby and Ferrigno will always represent Banner and Hulk, and the mythos that the reluctant Kenneth Johnson brought to the small screen will remain a fan favorite for many years to come. Each episode of Repeat is the result of nearly a dozen hours of research, writing, recording, and producing. If you enjoy this body of work, consider contributing to the show on Patreon, a service that provides digital artists a means to be compensated for their creativity. Visit www.patreon.com/repeat for more information. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thank you for listening to Repeat.